What should I talk? Okay, so, I don't know. It's more, okay, for the first, what's your name? Can you tell us again?
Yeah. Tell us about your name, you come from, and what you do now.
Of course. My name is Amber Engelson. I'm from the United States of America. I grew up in a very, very rural area called South Dakota, and it's very Christian.
Okay.
But then I left when I was 18, and I went to California, like you do.
California.
And then I've since traveled and lived in many different countries. So my name is Amber. It actually means it's a jewel. It's like, and it's a color like amber dawn. And my name is
That's
Amber Dawn
beautiful.
Angelson. And so my mother was a hippie. And so golden morning. And so that's my name, and so that's where it comes from. But like I was saying, when I first came to Indonesia, everyone was like, Amber. And so that was my first introduction to sort of the beautiful way that Indonesians mix and play with language to create new meaning. And it's not something that people who grew up monolingual, relatively monolingual like myself, where I had to learn, but later.
Amber in Indonesia is not only but also who talk very much.
Yeah.
Amber.
Oh. Yeah. Is it really?
Yeah.
This is true then.
Yeah,
how did my mother know?
Not only about
The place for
the
water.
Yeah.
Not only that one, but one who talk very much Amber.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Especially
so this is
bocor.
So every time I come to Indonesia, I learn a new layer to my name. And you'll see that I do talk a lot because I love people.
and actually Amber
is
more positive talking,
Yeah.
And actually Amber, to make sure I really Amber? Amber? Is that right?
Yeah, gitu.
Amber.
Making sure for everything.
Yeah.
Ember.
This is very good. Thank you for bringing this up. That's another layer. I thought it was just the...
So how we call your name?
Well, my mom says Amber.
Amber.
Yeah, I will answer to
Amber.
Yeah, Amber.
Okay.
No
Yeah.
Amber.
I do appreciate the. I taught for 2 years in Japan, and they called me Amba. Amba Sensei. And then Ambaga. They made jokes about that. So yeah.
Different country can different accent.
Yeah.
So something that truly curious. Why you interesting to Mubadalah?
So I actually became interested in Mubadalah just from reading Faki's work in English. And so I came to Indonesia to study the way that Indonesians use English, right? English has a long history of imperialism.
Yeah.
Right, where it's still imperialist, right? Cultural imperialism, right? It's everywhere, right? It's linked to global capital and money, and it's linked to whiteness, all kinds of different things, right? But when I came to study English as linguistic imperialism in Indonesia, and it's here. Do you agree? Yeah. Right, you have to learn English. You are required to publish in English, right, by Dictee 152 in order to get your PhD, right? There are all kinds of different, layers of imperialism. But I also, when I came here, I saw people using English in very creative ways. So pushing back at the imperialism, right? Saying, okay, what happens if I take this knowledge, right? If we view the knowledge itself as useful, right? And get past the language. What happens when I mix Islamic knowledge? When I mix with English, that knowledge that originated in the West? What happens if we kind of find commonalities, right? And say, oh, all this originated in North America, right? And this may have originated in Asia, right? We share this knowledge itself might actually intersect. And so I look at the ways that language and knowledge the ways that writers and feminists and activists sort of de-link language from knowledge to create new things, or relink languages to new knowledges. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and so PAKE does that with Mubadalah, right? So in PAKE's research, and forgive me if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly, but in PAKE's research, he draws from...
You're always right.
Which is why I love PAKE. Whatever the audience believes. But PAKE draws from Gadamer, right, who's German. He draws from, obviously, the Hadith. He draws from the women with whom he works. He draws from Amina Wadud. And all of this knowledge, right, it's coming from different language traditions and different origins, geographical origins, right? But what happens when it comes together, and how can we rewrite the world, right, in new ways if we, rather than assuming that we're all separate, right, that all of these knowledges are separate, right, or in contrast even, which is different than separate, right, that like we're opposites where there's like myself and then the other, right? What happens if we assume that everything's on the same plane?
Like the picture.
Yeah, like the picture, like Mubadalah. And that's sort of, you know, where that's, and that has implications for language, right? So we need to acknowledge that English is a language of power, that I have more power, right? I can choose not to learn Bahasa Indonesia, right? I mean, I try, but I could still choose not to learn Bahasa Indonesia, right? And you still have to learn English to communicate with me, right? So we have to acknowledge that power exists, but then maybe if we can acknowledge that power exists and then create reciprocal relations using language and combining our shared knowledge, we could make a better world.
You were right.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. So that's how I guess I just became interested in Mubadalah just from, I met PAKE in our first year in graduate school. I mean, his first year. I was doing my dissertation research. It was my final year.
I said Mubadalah, power is destiny.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has power. Maybe English, we have Indonesia, but we can share our power in order to make a benefit, make a goodness, in order to connect people to people. So power is good if we use it for goodness, but power become bad if we use for the other thing. So everybody has power, but how to use the power, how to make power for the benefit of human being. So that the issue, not the power itself, because power is destiny. I mean, everyone has power, has its her and his own power. Not only English, of course, because somebody or other people use other language to not to doing good for with their power. So that the meaning how we should connect each other. We should make a relationship that make benefit for all of the parts. I mean, of all the parties with the connection.
And what I like about what you're saying, PAKE, and about your work is that power isn't something that people have. It's power. Power should be something that people use, and its power should exist between to create connections, right? The energy should happen here, right? So if I have more power in some situations, I will maybe reach a little farther towards PAKE, right? In certain situations, but PAKE would have more power in other situations, right? And he would reach, and so it's in between, this sort of in between, rather than owning power. It's like, how do you use power?
She's from NTT. You know NTT?
NTT?
Yeah.
East Nusa Tenggara.
Close to Bali. Close to Bali.
Okay.
Close to Bali.
Eastern from
Okay.
I'm same like you. We travel in every place in. Kok aku grogi ya?
World
Halo,
travel.
Made. Sini.
So you trying to reconnect the spiritation of tradition and languages, you know.
You like
Trying
bubur
to-
kacang? Bubur kacang?
Did you know bubur
Should I
kacang?
just say yes?
Okay. Okay.
I always just say yes. Yes.
Okay.
I like most things Indonesian.
Okay. Then you try to reconnect, you know, this parrotation of tradition and languages between country and another country. About
Yeah.
trying to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And I think Mubadalah can give an inspiration to connect to each other, to understanding and how to give a beneficial thing to each other. I'm sorry if my English are not good.
Please don't apologize. So I can actually use that to talk about how Mubadalah might inform the ways that people who do speak standard English, right? Learn.
Kalau ada yang mau nanya bilang aja ya.
So wait for time. So did you notice how this young woman who's brilliant at English apologized for her English?
You were
Right?
right.
So that is an existing power relationship, right? Where my broader argument is that people in the West who do own standard English need to learn to listen, right? That standard English has been... Sure. Thanks, Paki. But that we really need to, I'm pointing to myself, right? That people who do have standard English, right, have the language of power, need to learn to listen. So English has long been used as an excuse not to listen, right? So, well, I'm not going to publish your groundbreaking work, right, on Islamic feminism because your English is not standardized. What's that doing if we are not getting access to that knowledge and new ways of viewing the world? So even people who view themselves as liberal, right, as like, I'm a feminist or I'm, progressive, right, even those people stand behind standard English as a means of not listening.
Yeah.
So Mubadalah would actually require, right, reciprocity. So I will give you, right, as much reciprocity as you give me.
Oh my God, thank you.
And
That's so great.
Right, and so my work has a lot to do with audience and who we are as audience members and how do we listen and what voices our audience to the languages that we use.
You are practicing Mubadalah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is something that women, and maybe across, and I don't mean to, sorry, Faki, but women are taught to do, I think, better than men across cultures, is to listen to each other.
Yeah,
do you
right.
agree, right, that like we have,
Yeah, I think yes.
yeah, and that we communicate to connect in ways that perhaps men are taught to communicate to win. And it's culture, right? Like it's not like they were just taught that way. It's not natural, right? And so if we can all like learn, right, perhaps some of the women's ways of connecting, I think
You
we
were
would
right.
have a better world.
So, did you believe that women have an kind of situated, experience that men can't understand? Men can experience or have such a situated knowledge, like
Well, I think just,
special knowledge.
I mean, I think just women, we have bodies, right? That men, and because of the way we have to move in the world differently, right?
You're right.
Because of the way that we're perceived by the world, right? So I have to behave in a certain way with my body in the United States. I will always, if I dress like this, be viewed as a woman, right?
Yeah.
There's a performance that I have to go through that men will never understand. Like in the United States, we often talk about, I remember talking with a boyfriend of mine when I was in college, like when I was very young, about how every time I go to a parking lot at night with my car, I hold my keys in my hand in case someone will attack me or assault me. Right, and he had no idea that I did this every single night, and so men don't have to worry about that. We're taught because we're taught that we're victims or that and we're taught that we need to protect ourselves instead of teaching men, right, that maybe they shouldn't assault women, right? But that's, so I think that there's an element, I don't think that, sorry men, but I think that women will move in the world. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Like that we move in the world differently?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. So it's a long story, you know,
Yeah.
that we make us in this situation.
Yeah.
Because I think that's totally okay.
Yeah.
We have security and you're right, that's we have to do.
Yeah.
So talking about the language that you maybe can, about
Actually,
access.
I think makes sense what Faki said before about like we are here. Initially, we don't have like confidence to talk in public, to talk about anything, but like give positive strongly to us, like Faki said. Yeah, we are feel like that. We are become confident because Faki or another ulama, women ulama in Indonesia, like give us opportunity to talk in public, like that. And you know, a lot of women ulama in Indonesia that have great knowledge about hadith, about the verses of Al-Quran, about anything related to Islam, that so many men ulama talk about that in public, but actually it's not. There are a lot of women ulama, and Mubadalah.id, one of the platform in Indonesia that give many chance to women ulama to talk in public, and the result is there are no women ulama in Indonesia that confident and brave and to talk about anything, especially about Islamic, about gender relations, anything with Islamic basis.
And so that's the basis, and it's built this network of younger women, right, who are comfortable.
Especially in Indonesia, the country that the most religion is Islam. So anyone will talk about. So if we like speech in public through social media or through anything, and bring verses of Al-Quran or Hadith, that become people believe to us, more believe. More believe.
Absolutely. Your it establishes your
You bring
credibility.
like an Al-Quran or Hadith, the people will trust you.
Because you're right.
It's the basis, and it establishes your credibility. In Western rhetorical terms, we would say that establishes your ethos, right? Like your ethos, and it's not something like it's like something that you have already, right? You already know the Quran and you already know the Hadith, but it's about actually being able to speak about it, right? And having the moment to like talk about it in the space, right?
Like space and moment to talk. If there is no moment for women, we create the moment.
Exactly. And I would imagine that women, right, interpret the Hadith differently and the Quran differently, right, than men would, because I was just talking about your lived experiences as women moving in the world, physical, embodied, everything, right? Your lived experiences, right, will encourage you to interpret differently, right?
You were
and
right.
adding new stories, right, to the I don't know, the web.
So that's an interesting idea that when women interpret the text of Quran and Hadith, you know, they can include or accommodation of her perspective. Because the interpretation of Hadith and Al-Quran that we terima tuh, that we accept until right now, that lot of man perspective, you know.
Many thousands of years.
So man-centered, male-centered, and oh my God. So
patriarchy. I'm sorry.
Never apologize.
Sorry.
No, I've never apologized for it.
I won't again. So the patriarchy also affected the interpretation of text.
Absolutely.
So we trying to reinterpretation about that text to more what is Rama, more comfortable to comfortable to all women, and give them right to speak, to live freely.
Oh, thank you. Could you?
Apa ya, in another perspective, apa ya, another stereotype about feminist in Indonesia, we more familiar now feminist is from West.
Yeah, you're right. It's so hard.
We always apa ya, we always our mindset when we build up, we always apa ya, know everything is from West is more superiority from us. Jadi so everything about knowledge, about experience, maybe jadi we don't really confidence to talk about,
because there are a lot of people in Indonesia that anti-Western, like so that affected how we campaign about Mubadalah ideas, because the idea is part of basically in Islam also udah ada already exists about
it's here already. That's what's powerful for me about decolonial feminism, is that you need to make the assumption, right, that the knowledge already exists in places. We are all equally modern, and we are all living in the same historical moment. No one is behind somebody else. You need to assume. You need to assume, right, that in fact, like, and a lot of Western feminists haven't, right, that we assume, right, that Muslim women don't have agency, right, that Muslim women are oppressed always, right, it's like, and so like that's something that's really powerful. What you said, right, is that we in the West need to learn to listen too, right? And we need to learn to understand and think, rather than think we need to bring this knowledge to Indonesia or to Muslim. We need to actually say, what can I learn from that knowledge? And so that's something that I tried very much to do, but it's very difficult, right? Because of power, right? And so that's something that working with Faki and Nini. And Nia Mariana, working with them like has really helped me sort of be critical of the ways that like that my culture interpolates you.
You're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Understand each other.
And all of this is wrapped up in language too, right? It's the same concept, right? Right, that you are at a linguistic deficit somehow. Right? If you don't speak standard English, you're at a linguistic deficit. No, you speak 5 different languages. You are at a linguistic surplus, right? But again, like kind of we need to sort of stop mapping. Mapping is a conceptual word. Mapping deficit onto other cultures. Right?
You're right. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, I think he just. Anyone have questions? Enjoy.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Bahasa pakai bahasa Indonesia aja. Ini.
I'm sorry, my English is bad, but
No. What did I say? No apologies. Oh, you have it. Okay.
What's your motivation to learn about more knowledge in world? Your experience with your genuine knowledge, especially about Mubadalah perspective. And then, what's your challenge to learn about more knowledge in the world? Your motivation, your challenge, and apa sih harapan tuh? Hope your hope.
Your challenge and your hope
I
about
love that. Those are my questions for you. I wrote them down on the train.
Your target.
I did. Those are my 3 questions. Great minds. We're all connected. And so that's an answer. I've never been asked what my motivation is for doing what I do and studying what I do, which is strange, right? Because I ask other people that. I think my motivation is the fact that I believe that people's stories are people's stories.
Personal story.
That's why I teach writing, and that's why I teach, right? It's not to convey knowledge, it's to learn from people and to share stories. So I can share my stories and I can learn from you. And I think that the more we can connect our stories, right? The better the world will be, right? So I may look at you and say, oh, you're wearing a jilbab, we're so very different. But what if instead of assuming, right, that like we're opposites, what if we started talking about our grandmother's cooking, right? And our stories. What if we started meeting each other through stories of like the everyday moments, right? Where we could connect, or as women, right? The everyday moments in the stories. And so I think that that's my motivation has always been, it's not to like teach perfect English, or it's to actually like teach people to have confidence in their stories, and then also so I can learn from their stories as well.
Oh my God. Totally agree, because women's stories, women's experience is knowledge.
Yeah, it is knowledge, right? And we may tell stories amongst ourselves in intimate moments like this, right? Where we're very comfortable with other women, right? But encouraging like women that your stories matter in the larger web of stories is so important, right?
You are right.
And that's what Mubadalah does, right? Is like it encourages you to realize, it gives you voice in a way that like you have voice already, right? But a broader voice. So that's my motivation. Okay, so motivation, and then what was the second one?
Challenge. The challenge to try to connect to each other.
Connect the knowledge.
Connecting the knowledge. What is your challenge?
Language, bahasa.
My challenge is
Maybe bahasa.
my challenge is my deficit probably, in that I, in fact, only have like very basic Bahasa Indonesia, so I can translate it when I'm reading it. And so that's, again, it's because of my own deficit. I constantly worry that I'm misinterpreting, right, people's English, or misinterpreting like the translations that I'll do using translation tools, right? Or that I'm misinterpreting Islam, right? Like that is my greatest fear, and that's why I had so many member checks. It's like I did not grow up in a country, right, that really embraced Islam and general knowledge about Islam, right? I grew up in a country that tended to demonize Islam in very problematic ways, right? And so my fear is that somehow like I'll have that ideology, right, and then I'll map it on in ways that are like, and which I try very much not to.
Kupi?
Yeah, Kupi.
Kupi.
Yes.
November, we Congress.
Yeah. So you have the second Kupi coming up, right?
Kupi.
So the first one was here in Cirebon, correct?
You were
right.
First one in Cirebon. And then the second one will be declared in Jepara.
In Jepara, where's that?
In Java, North Java, Jawa Tengah, North West, North
Central
Java. Oh my gosh,
Central Java.
Central Java. Yeah, I think you should join us.
Is it online?
Yeah.
It's online?
No, it's not.
When is it?
Such a big women ulama congress.
I'm only here for 2 weeks.
Oh my God!
I have a baby at home. A 3-year-old. I want to.
You can come
That's
again.
one of the challenges, actually. Like talking about challenges is. I know. I want to come live here again. But that's another challenge, right? It's so far away,
Yeah,
right?
you were right.
And being a woman, right? And I have a 3-year-old son. And so it's been, and so it's been kind of challenging to come back. And but I've tried, and I've been working with Joaquin for 12 years. Like he's like, where's your book, woman? Where's your book? You keep interviewing me. So I have all this 12 years of data.